Lucia Vega froze mid-polish as billionaire tech. CEO Victor Reeves waved a document in Mandarin. Before his executive team, her secret fluency burned in her throat. Anyone who can translate this acquisition proposal gets my salary for a day. 20,400, Reeves announced, nudging aside Lucia's cleaning cart with his Italian leather shoe. The conference room erupted in laughter as executives exchanged knowing glances. Lucia kept her eyes down, focusing on the circular motion of her cloth against the mahogany table. "Maybe we should just use Google Translate," joked Derek Willis, VP of Operations, his Harvard class ring clinking against his water glass. "Probably more reliable than whatever discount service we'd get otherwise." Lucia's phone vibrated in her pocket, a reminder of the eviction, notice giving her family 72 hours before a court hearing that could leave them homeless. 20,400, the exact amount standing between dignity and desperation. Her fingers closed around the jade translator's pen in her pocket. Her father's final gift, a skill hidden, a heritage denied, a chance dangling before her. Would revealing her true self to those who looked through her bring salvation or merely new humiliation? The question hung in the air like a prophecy as she slipped from the room, invisible once more. Lucia hadn't always been invisible. 15 years ago, she was the bright-eyed 8-year-old who amazed her teachers by switching effortlessly between English, Spanish, and Mandarin. Her Chinese mother, Min, had met her Dominican father, Raphael, at an international student exchange in Boston. Their love story had flourished despite cultural differences, bound by a shared passion for languages and education. Words build bridges between worlds, Raphael would tell Lucia, his voice gentle as he taught her to write characters that danced across the page. By 10, she could translate conversations between her Chinese grandparents and Dominican relatives, earning proud smiles from both sides of her family. The jade translator's pen had been her 13th birthday gift, cool and weighty in her palm, its smooth surface interrupted only by carved characters spelling, "Knowledge illuminates." When she held it close, she could smell the faint sandalwood scent of her father's study, where they'd spent countless hours poring over texts in multiple languages. This pen belonged to a great scholar, her father had explained. Now it belongs to another. 3 months later, Raphael Vega was laid off from Reeves Enterprises during a strategic restructuring. After 15 years developing the company's Asian market partnerships, he was discarded with a severance package that barely covered 2 months' rent. The health insurance disappeared overnight when the persistent cough turned out to be stage 4 lung cancer. The medical bills accumulated, faster than the rejection letters from his job applications. Lucia remembered the night her father called her to his bedside. His voice reduced to a papery whisper. He pressed the jade pen into her hand. "Do not let them make you small, mi estrella. Your mind is your sanctuary. Keep it safe. Hide your light if you must, but never let it go out." He died 2 weeks later, leaving Min and Lucia drowning in debt. The life of scholarships and academic promise Lucia had been building vanished. She dropped out of her linguistics program at Columbia to work, but a series of part-time jobs couldn't keep up. Her mother, Min, took on double shifts as a nurse, but her shoulders stooped more each day. Finally, in a desperate bid for steady work and health benefits, Lucia used a friend's reference to secure a job with the building maintenance contractor servicing Reeves Enterprises, corporate headquarters. It was a cruel irony, cleaning the very halls where her father had once been a respected strategist. Here she was nobody, a silent figure in a grey uniform, wiping surfaces, emptying trash bins, and absorbing the casual cruelties of the people who had ruined her family. For 2 years, she moved through the gleaming towers like a ghost. She heard snippets of deals, saw confidential graphs left on screens, and understood the casual arrogance of the tech elite. Victor Reeves was a demigod in this realm, a man whose whims dictated fortunes. And now his whim was a Mandarin document his overpaid, monolingual team couldn't decipher. The 20,400 wasn't just money. It was the exact sum needed for the back rent and legal fees to stop the eviction. It was her father's stolen severance, his discarded value, now being dangled as a day's amusement. As she emptied wastebaskets in the empty hallway, her mind raced. The document had been a standard acquisition proposal from a Shenzhen tech firm, but with several deliberately ambiguous clauses concerning intellectual property transfer, a classic negotiation trap. She had understood it instantly. The pen felt like a live wire in her pocket. To step forward would be to shatter the careful invisibility that protected her from pity and her mother from shame. It would force her to explain how a janitor knew complex legal Mandarin. It would expose her family's history with Reeves. Yet to stay silent was to choose certain ruin. The prophecy of her father's words warred with the reality of her mother's exhausted eyes. She finished her cart's route mechanically, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The decision was crystallizing, terrifying and absolute. She would not let them make her small. Not anymore. The invisible girl was about to speak. The weight of the jade pen was an anchor, a tether to her father's voice. Lucia stood outside the polished mahogany door of the conference room, her cart a silent sentinel beside her. The muffled sounds of frustrated debate leaked through the wood. Just outsource it to a legal translation. Firm in Hong Kong. It'll take 2 days and cost a fortune. But what choice do we have? It was Derek Willis's voice, tinged with irritation. Lucia's hand, slick with sweat, closed around the door handle. She thought of her mother's hands, raw from sterilization chemicals, and her father's, once confidently sketching business models, later trembling as he held a glass of water. She pushed the door open. The conversation died instantly. 11 pairs of executive eyes swiveled from the document to the janitor in the stained, grey uniform who had interrupted their summit. Victor Reeves's brow furrowed in annoyance. "We didn't call for cleaning. You can come back later." Lucia didn't move. She pulled the jade pen from her pocket, the carved characters cool against her skin. "The clause on page 3, section 4B, she said, her voice clear and steady, cutting the air-conditioned silence. "It doesn't say joint ownership of derivative patents. The term used is gongxiang. But in this specific regulatory context, it implies a temporary, revocable usage license. They keep ultimate ownership. If you sign this as written, you're not acquiring their core technology. You're leasing it on a year-to-year basis." A stunned silence swallowed the room. Derek Willis choked on his mineral water. Victor Reeves's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in intense surgical focus. He studied her face, the uniform, and then the pen in her hand. "Who are you?" he asked, the condescension gone, replaced by pure, unadulterated curiosity. "My name is Lucia Vega. My father was Rafael Vega. He built your East Asia logistics framework. You laid him off 15 years ago." The words hung there, stark and undeniable. "The term in section 7A you're all debating? It's a deliberate obfuscation. It translates literally as cloud hand methodology, but it's a colloquialism from Shenzhen's tech hubs, meaning vaporware. They're over-promising on a feature that doesn't fully exist yet." Reeves leaned back in his chair, a slow, appraising gesture. He glanced at the document, then back at her. "Prove it. Translate the second paragraph on page 5, verbally, now." Lucia didn't look at the paper. She closed her eyes for a second, summoning the image of the text she'd seen only briefly. Then in flawless, accentless Mandarin, she recited the paragraph. She followed it with a crisp, professional English interpretation, highlighting the hidden liability risks. The room was utterly still. You could hear the hum of the projector. Victor Reeves stood up. He walked around the table until he was standing before her. He didn't look at her uniform anymore. He looked at her eyes. "The salary for a day offer stands. But I have a better one. A job starting today as my senior translation and cultural strategy liaison. Your starting salary will be..." He named a figure that made Lucia's breath catch. It was more than 3 times the eviction amount, annually. "Why?" was all Lucia could manage to ask, her defiance momentarily softened by shock. "Because I pay for value," Reeves said, his voice low. "And you just demonstrated more acute value in 3 minutes than this entire room has in 3 weeks. Your father was a good man. The restructuring was a brutal calculus, one I'm beginning to regret." He extended his hand. It wasn't an apology, but it was an acknowledgement. Lucia looked at the outstretched hand, then at the faces of the executives, a tableau of awe, jealousy, and confusion. She thought of the eviction notice, of her mother's exhaustion, of her father's pen whispering of bridges between worlds. She took his hand. The deal was sealed, not with a contract, but with a shared understanding of worth recognized. That evening, Lucia Vega walked out of the Reeves Tower, not through the service entrance, but through the glittering main lobby, her janitor's uniform in a bag under her arm. Her first act was to transfer the 27,400 to her mother's account with a 3-word note. "We're safe now." Her second was to visit her father's grave. She placed the jade pen on the headstone, a silent testament. She didn't need to hide it anymore. The knowledge it represented was no longer a secret. It was her foundation. The next morning, Lucia walked back into the tower, not as a ghost, but as a force. She had crossed the bridge her father had spoken of, the one built with words, from the world of the invisible to the world of the seen. And her first task was to ensure no other talent was ever overlooked, no other light forced to hide. Her story, a testament to hidden strength and the power of heritage, was just beginning. If you were moved by Lucia's journey from invisibility to being seen for her true worth, please share this story of resilience and hidden strength. For more inspiring tales that celebrate kindness, dignity, and the unexpected heroes among us, like and subscribe to my channel, Kindness True Stories. Your support helps us shine a light on more narratives that remind us of the profound impact of recognition and the bridges built by understanding.